So, these are a few definitions or these are a few terms that we will come across throughout this chapter, and um, these will be used very frequently. So, the first one is the equator, which is basically an imaginary line that divides the earth into the northern and southern hemisphere. So, now the equator divides the earth into two parts, the northern and southern hemispheres, as it says. So the northern hemisphere is the top part of the earth, and the southern hemisphere is obviously the bottom part. Now, why are they called hemispheres? Because the earth is in the shape of a sphere, and half of a sphere is known as a hemisphere. All right, so half of the earth is known as the hemisphere, and that is why they're called the northern and southern hemispheres. The second definition that we have, or the second term that we'll be coming across, is the foothills. And foothills are basically hills at the base of mountain or mountain ranges. Now, whenever there are any mountains, there'll be smaller hills towards where they start from, near the ground area. It will not be a direct cone that they're forming, rather, there'll be small mountain ranges or mountains near the base of the mountain. So there'll be small hills at the bases, and they are known as foothills. The third one is scrub. Now, scrub is just a type of plant which is there in the deserts, and they're kind of bushes. So, a bush is obviously, as all of you must be knowing, a bush is any plant which does not have major trunks or branches in them. Rather, it's dominated by leaves. So scrubs are also a type of bush. They're present in deserts. The next one is cash crop. Now, cash crop is any agricultural crop which is grown to sell for profit, which means that any crops which are grown for profit profitable purposes rather than just to eat. For example, if there are two farmers, one farmer is growing crops to be sold uh, in the market, and from those crops that he sells, he will earn a revenue, he will earn money. Now, that crop for him will be a cash crop because he's earning money through that crop. Whereas the other person who's growing the same crop, but he grows that crop in sufficient enough for him and his family to eat, that will not be called a cash crop because that crop is not being sold to people or it's not being used for profitable purposes. It is just being used to be eaten by the family. Number five. Number five, we have GDP. GDP, the full form is gross domestic product. And as the definition states, it is the measurement that seeks to capture a country's economic output. All right. Now, with this, we mean in broad terms that countries, there are countries, and every country has an economic output. The economic output is obviously the revenue that the country generates, and because of the revenue, how much the country is able to invest in their back into their country. Now, countries with larger GDPs will have obviously a greater amount of goods and services generated, and they will have a better standard of living. What is the standard of living? Standard of living is the conditions of people living in the country. Okay? For example, if in Pakistan or if in Karachi we see जो कच्ची आबादियां होती हैं हमारी यहाँ की, those कच्ची आबादीज, the standard of living where the people live, they're mostly people who come in as refugees from other countries. Mostly they're those people, or they're people who earned very less. Okay? So their standard of living is also not very good. They live in what we call in Urdu chopdiyan. So they live in those very meager homes, in very uh, unbuilt, unstructured homes, and they spend their lives there. Then, and obviously, anyone who's a little better off, obviously they have a better standard of living. Likewise, so this depends on the standard of living is dependent on how much GDP we've generated, because all the GDP that's generated, that will be invested back in the society only. All right.